Most people are chasing fireworks, hoping for sudden wealth, sudden success, sudden recognition. They look for the magic shortcut, the one big break, the secret nobody is telling them. But let me tell you a truth few are willing to accept. Success doesn't come in bursts of brilliance. It grows quietly, patiently, in the soil of ordinary actions done extraordinarily well. The small choices you make every day, the habits, the disciplines, the consistent fundamentals, these are the invisible forces that compound into a life most people call extraordinary. Wealth isn't found at the end of a lottery ticket or in a risky gamble. It is quietly earned by mastering the basics that everyone else overlooks, ignoring the noise, and building a foundation so solid that life itself must eventually recognize it. Discipline has always been the great starting point of every transformation in my life. Long before money showed up, before opportunities expanded, before doors opened, there was the simple act of doing what I said I would do. Discipline is that quiet muscle that grows in the dark, away from applause, away from recognition, but its results appear in the daylight for the whole world to see. I learned early on that if I couldn't trust myself with the small things, life would never trust me with the big things. Wealth isn't something you chase, it's something you become worthy of, and discipline is what makes you worthy. Every fortune is built not on brilliance or luck, but on the daily commitment to do what most people are unwilling to do. I used to think wealth started with money, but then I discovered it actually starts in your habits, your routines, your schedule, and your ability to control the little impulses that talk you out of doing what must be done. There was a time in my life when I made promises casually, almost carelessly, especially promises to myself. I would say tomorrow I'll start, or next week I'll get serious. And the more I postponed, the weaker I became. One day I realized that every broken promise to myself was a withdrawal from my own self-respect. And when self-respect is low, ambition dies, energy fades, and wealth becomes impossible. So I made a simple decision to keep the small promises, to wake up when I said I would, to read even if it was just 10 minutes, to plan my day before my day took control of me. These weren't big steps, but each small discipline became a brick in the foundation of a stronger, wealthier life. The beautiful thing about discipline is that it compounds just like money. I used to dedicate 1 quiet hour every morning to reading, studying, or planning. That hour changed everything. It wasn't dramatic at first, but over months and years, that single hour transformed my thinking. And when your thinking changes, your choices change. And when your choices change, your income changes. Most people underestimate the value of a disciplined hour. They're waiting for breakthroughs, miracles, motivation. But the miracle is already available. It's in the structure you place around your day. Give me 1 disciplined hour for a year, and I'll show you a wealthier, sharper, more capable version of yourself. Reviewing my goals each morning became another discipline that reshaped my future. A goal forgotten is a goal surrendered, so I kept my goals visible. Every morning, I reminded myself of where I was going, so I wouldn't get lost in the noise of the day. Some mornings, my goals felt exciting. Other mornings, they felt impossible. But discipline doesn't ask for how you feel, it asks for your commitment. I learned that the moment you review your goals each morning, you're telling your mind, this is who I intend to become, and eventually your behavior starts aligning with your intentions. But perhaps the most powerful discipline of all is honoring the promises you make to yourself. Not the grand promises, the small ones. If you say you'll save $10, save $10. If you say you'll walk for 10 minutes, walk for 10 minutes. If you say you'll read 5 pages, read 5 pages. Those tiny commitments seem insignificant, but they are the training ground for the character required to build wealth. You don't become wealthy when money arrives. You become wealthy when discipline arrives. Master the small disciplines, and life will reward you with large opportunities. I learned very early that money has a simple rule. It behaves exactly the way you instruct it to. If you spend more than you earn, you invite stress, chaos, and eventually disaster. If you spend less than you earn, you create margin, and in that margin lives every possibility for wealth. Most people try to complicate the subject of money, but the basics never change. If your outgo is greater than your income, then your upkeep will become your downfall. I discovered that truth in my younger years when I was working hard but still broke. Not because the world was unfair, but because my habits were undisciplined. My problem wasn't income, my problem was impulse. I was buying things emotionally, not intelligently, trying to impress people who weren't thinking about me. What changed my life was realizing that money doesn't disappear, it walks away in small steps through unexamined decisions. Wealth begins the moment you take control of those steps. Living with intention rather than impulse became a turning point for me. I began asking myself a simple question before every purchase. Is this necessary or is this emotional? And every time I paused to ask, I could feel a new strength forming. Intentional spending gives you power. Impulsive spending steals it. Most people don't plan to be broke. They just never plan to be wealthy. They let small expenses drip away their possibilities like a leaking faucet. When you live intentionally, you stop those leaks. You begin directing your money instead of chasing it. One of the smartest steps I ever took was tracking every dollar for 30 days. Not every category, every dollar. The first time I did it, I was shocked. I realized I wasn't losing money in big dramatic ways. I was losing it in tiny, silent ones. A snack here, a subscription there, a spontaneous purchase, a little treat. None of these seemed dangerous on their own. But combined, they were quietly delaying my future. Awareness changed everything. Once you see where your money actually goes, you stop pretending and start correcting. The numbers tell the truth, and the truth sets you free. Cutting unnecessary expenses was the next natural step. I didn't begin with extreme cuts. I simply removed one expense each week that wasn't serving my future. One meal out, one entertainment cost, one emotional purchase. What surprised me was that I didn't feel deprived, I felt empowered. Every dollar I saved wasn't a loss of pleasure, it was a gain of possibility. I started realizing that wealth isn't built by what you earn, but by what you keep. Money saved becomes money available for investment, and that is where the magic begins. And then came the rule that changed the direction of my finances forever. Save at least 10% of every dollar, no matter what. Not when it's convenient, not when you feel ready, not when you've handled everything else. Right now, every time, automatically, the first 10% goes to your future, not your present. When I first practiced this, I was tempted to skip it. I thought I couldn't afford to save. The truth was the opposite. I couldn't afford not to. Saving 10% is not about the amount, it's about the habit. The moment you prove to yourself that you can set something aside, you begin to build the character of someone who can handle more. Most people wait to save until they have a surplus. But surplus doesn't appear by waiting, it appears by deciding. And once you begin saving consistently, your life gains a different rhythm. You start feeling more secure, more confident, more in control. You begin thinking long-term, and long-term thinking is the birthplace of wealth. Spend less than you earn, always, and you give yourself the breathing room that leads to prosperity. Wealth doesn't begin with earning more, it begins with managing better. Live with intention, not impulse, and your money will start working for you instead of disappearing from you. I once learned a lesson that shaped the way I looked at money forever. Money doesn't change you, it reveals you. If you are careless with a small amount, you will be even more careless with a large one. If you lose track of pennies, you will lose track of dollars. If you can't manage a little, you'll mishandle a lot. Money magnifies habits, good or bad. And that's why wealth is not the first step. Management is. Before life gives you more, it checks how you handle what you already have. I discovered this truth at a time when I was struggling financially, not because I didn't have enough, but because I didn't know what I was doing with what I had. I kept thinking that a bigger paycheck would solve my problems, but all a bigger paycheck would have done was give me more to mismanage. Once I realized that the problem wasn't the amount, but the administration, everything began to change. There was a season when I earned just enough to get by, and each time I received a little extra, it slipped through my fingers faster than the regular amount. That's when it hit me. Money was not the issue, it was my habits. I started treating my finances like a garden. If I couldn't care for a small patch of soil, how could I expect to handle a large field? That shift in mindset saved my future. Most people dream of multiplication, more income, more opportunities, more profit, but they skip the step of management. Multiplication without management turns into chaos. But when you learn to manage first, multiplication becomes inevitable. One of the most powerful practices I developed was creating a weekly money review ritual. Once a week, I would sit down, no distractions, no excuses, and look at my numbers. Not to judge myself, but to understand myself. I tracked what came in, what went out, what I saved, what I wasted, and what I needed to correct. Sometimes I felt proud, other times I felt uncomfortable. But the ritual forced me to face my reality, and facing reality is the birthplace of change. When you review your money weekly, you take control of your choices before your choices control you. That quiet meeting with myself created clarity, and clarity created better decisions. Then I adopted a simple budgeting system. It wasn't complicated or sophisticated. It didn't require financial genius. It required intention. I used envelopes at first, one for savings, one for necessities, one for education, one for investments, and one for lifestyle. Later I used apps, but the principle stayed the same. Every dollar had a name before it was spent. I discovered that when money has an assignment, it behaves. When it doesn't, it wanders. Budgeting wasn't about restriction, it was about direction. It taught me that money becomes powerful the moment it becomes purposeful. I also learned the importance of paying attention to every cent. Not because of greed or fear, but because awareness is the beginning of prosperity. If you don't know where your money goes, it will always leave without telling you. I started noticing patterns, small leaks, emotional expenses, unnecessary conveniences, and each time I identified one, I patched it. Those little patches became major breakthroughs. Managing every cent built discipline, and discipline built confidence. Over time, something remarkable happened. I became someone who could handle more. Opportunities started appearing, not because luck arrived, but because responsibility did. Management made me capable. And once life sees you're capable, it entrusts you with more. Money responds to order. It grows where there is structure. So master management before chasing multiplication. Handle the small amounts with care, and the large amounts will find their way to you. Wealth doesn't begin when you earn more. It begins when you manage better. I've often said that we become what we think about. I learned this truth not in a boardroom, but sitting alone at a small kitchen table, staring at bills I couldn't pay. The world around me seemed harsh, unforgiving, and random, and my mind reflected exactly that. I worried about not having enough, feared making the wrong move, and doubted my ability to create financial security. In short, my mindset was bankrupt long before my wallet showed it. Then I realized something profound. The economy, the market, the job market, none of these controlled my wealth. My thinking did. My beliefs shaped my actions shaped my habits, and my habits shaped my financial destiny. If I wanted a better wallet, I had to start with a better mind. I began feeding my mind deliberately, like a gardener feeding soil before planting seeds. Every day, I committed to at least 20 minutes of personal development. Some days it was a book, other days a lecture or an insightful article. I listened to people who had achieved what I wanted to achieve and absorbed their ideas like a sponge. At first, it felt foreign. My brain had been used to complaints, excuses, and scarcity thinking. But little by little, those 20 minutes each day began to replace old, limiting beliefs with new, empowering ones. My perspective started to shift. I stopped thinking in terms of I hope and began thinking in terms of I will. I also made a conscious effort to identify and replace negative money beliefs. I had grown up hearing phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees, or rich people are greedy. These thoughts seemed harmless at the time, but they had lodged themselves deep in my subconscious, shaping my choices without me even realizing it. Every time a limiting belief popped up, I questioned it. I replaced fear with possibility. I replaced doubt with action. Instead of worrying about bills, I began asking, how can I create more value? How can I solve bigger problems? I learned that wealth is a natural byproduct of thinking bigger, not a game of chance. Surrounding myself with people who thought bigger than I did was another turning point. I stopped spending time with those who complained, envied, or justified mediocrity. Instead, I sought out people who dreamed, acted, and achieved. I watched how they approached problems, how they allocated time and resources, how they valued growth over immediate comfort. Their habits rubbed off on me, and soon I was speaking and thinking their language. Your environment, your circle, becomes the scaffolding for your own mindset. If you want a larger vision, you must spend time among those who already operate at that level. Eventually, I saw the results in my financial life. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't magic. But as my thoughts changed, so did my actions. I became deliberate in opportunities I pursued, careful in decisions I made, and confident in risks I took. Wealth followed naturally, not because I had learned a trick, but because my thinking had transformed. Your financial life will always mirror the quality of your thinking. Feed your mind better ideas, nurture your beliefs, surround yourself with people who elevate you, and your wallet will follow where your mind has already gone. I've learned over the years that the road to wealth is not paved with flashy strategies or secret shortcuts. The truth is, the basics of wealth are often boring. They don't sparkle. They don't make for exciting stories at dinner parties. But here's the secret. Greatness hides in repetition, and the boring things, done consistently, compound into extraordinary results. Early in my career, I watched people chase shiny ideas, get-rich-quick schemes, the latest investment fad, the secret opportunity, and they almost always failed. Meanwhile, the person who consistently paid themselves first, tracked their spending, and invested steadily, quietly built a foundation that could weather storms. I realized that wealth isn't about excitement, it's about mastery of fundamentals. I started by tracking my financial habits daily. I didn't just look at my bank account at the end of the month. I wrote down every dollar I earned, every dollar I spent, and every dollar I invested. I noted patterns, habits, and opportunities for improvement. It wasn't glamorous. Some days, it felt tedious. But over time, I began to see the story of my money clearly. It was no longer a blur or a mystery. This clarity gave me power. I could see where I was wasting time and resources, and I could redirect them to build my future. Next, I committed to a simple investment strategy. I didn't chase the latest stock tip or try to time the market. I consistently put money into vehicles I understood. Vehicles that had been proven over time to grow wealth. I automated these investments whenever possible. Even if it was small at first, consistency mattered more than size. Years later, those small, boring, but disciplined investments had grown far beyond what sporadic bursts of excitement ever could. This is the magic of compounding. The quiet, steady work that no one notices, but that eventually produces extraordinary results. And perhaps the most important lesson was practicing routine even when motivation fades. I learned early that relying on willpower alone is a losing game. Some days, I felt motivated to plan, track, and invest. Other days, I didn't. But the 3%, the people who build lasting wealth, don't depend on mood or emotion. They rely on systems, routines, and habits. I created daily, weekly, and monthly rituals that ensured the basics were covered, no matter what. Over time, these rituals became second nature, and wealth grew not because of luck or genius, but because of reliable action repeated day after day. The lesson is simple but profound. The basics may be boring, but they are the foundation. Track your habits, stick to your strategy, commit to routine even when it feels dull. That's where the real power lies. The flashy ideas fade, but disciplined repetition compounds. When you master the simple, ordinary, and seemingly dull tasks consistently, wealth will take care of itself. I've learned over the years that building wealth isn't just about making money, it's about protecting it. Many people earn a decent income, even quite a lot, yet somehow they never seem to get ahead. The problem isn't always opportunity or ability, it's foolish choices. It's the impatience to chase the next big thing, the greed that blinds judgment, or the shortcuts that promise instant results but deliver long-term losses. One of the first lessons I ever had in business was this simple truth. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And the sooner you grasp that, the sooner you begin to build real, lasting wealth. I remember early on when I was just starting out, I was eager to invest in every opportunity that came my way. Someone offered me a deal that promised double my money in a month. Another promised access to insider information that guaranteed profits. I was tempted. I thought I was clever enough to beat the system, but I stopped and asked myself, do I really understand this? Do I know the mechanics, the risks, the realistic outcomes? The answer was no. I walked away, and that small act of patience saved me from losses that would have set me back years. That's the key. Never invest in something you don't understand. Knowledge is protection. Ignorance is risk. Another habit I adopted early in my financial journey was learning to sleep on every major purchase or investment. I've noticed that when a decision is made impulsively, emotion is usually driving it. Excitement, fear, or the desire to impress others. But when you pause, give yourself time to think, research and evaluate, clarity emerges. I've bought fewer things, but every purchase has been wiser. And in business, that same principle applies. Measure twice, act once. Patience becomes a shield, and over time it protects not just your money, but your peace of mind. Lastly, building a safety net became non-negotiable. Life is unpredictable. Emergencies happen. A sudden medical bill, a job loss, or an unexpected expense can wipe out months of hard work in an instant. I began to prioritize, creating a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, not because it was glamorous, but because it provided security and freedom. That safety net allowed me to take calculated risks elsewhere without endangering my foundation. It gave me confidence to pursue opportunities that others might avoid out of fear. So, protecting your money isn't about fear, it's about stewardship. It's about becoming wise, deliberate, and patient in your decisions. Never rush, never act out of emotion. Understand where every dollar is going, give major choices time, and always have a safety net. This discipline, this careful guardianship of your resources is what allows wealth to grow steadily and sustainably. Remember, your money is a tool, not a toy, and how you manage it today determines the freedom you enjoy tomorrow. I've always believed that time is the one asset that no one can earn back. Money can come and go, opportunities can appear and vanish, but time, once it passes, is gone forever. That's why I tell people over and over, if you want to build wealth, you must start respecting time as your greatest ally. Wealth is not built overnight. It is built day by day, decision by decision, small effort by small effort, compounded over months and years. The magic of compounding is one of life's greatest mysteries. The earlier you start, the more time you give your money, your skills, and your habits to grow exponentially. I remember when I first began putting aside a small portion of every paycheck into savings and investments. At the time, it felt almost laughable. $5 here, $10 there. But the key wasn't the amount. The key was starting early and staying consistent. Each dollar I invested had the opportunity to work for me over time. By the time a decade had passed, those small contributions had grown far beyond what I could have imagined, not because of extraordinary effort, but because I gave them the gift of time. It's a principle that applies not only to money, but also to knowledge, relationships, and skills. Time magnifies whatever you consistently feed it. One practical habit I recommend is increasing your investments annually by at least 5 to 10%. Life grows, income grows, and your financial commitments grow, but by making a habit of contributing more each year, you let compounding do the heavy lifting. Even small, incremental increases, repeated year after year, yield tremendous results. But it's not just money. Time invested in learning, skill building, and personal growth compounds in the same way. A single hour spent reading, studying, or reflecting today can turn into expertise, opportunity, and income for decades to come. Equally important is eliminating procrastination. I used to see so many people waiting for the right moment to act, and I learned the hard way that the right moment rarely comes on its own. That's why I adopted a simple weekly action list, a plan of specific, deliberate steps for each day. By writing down what had to be done, I removed indecision and hesitation from my life. Each small action, when consistently taken, added up. The result? Momentum, progress, and growth that felt almost automatic because I had given my future self the gift of my disciplined present actions. Never underestimate small efforts. People often wait for monumental opportunities or sudden inspiration, thinking that wealth requires dramatic gestures. But the truth is, small efforts applied consistently today become big results tomorrow. The person who begins saving, learning, and investing early, even in tiny amounts, gives themselves the most powerful advantage: time. Time turns ordinary actions into extraordinary outcomes. It multiplies effort, knowledge, and resources in ways that impatience and impulsiveness never can. So, treat every hour as precious, start early, remain disciplined, and let time do its work. The wealth you seek is not in chasing it frantically, it's in harnessing the quiet, unstoppable power of time. I want to talk to you about a principle that many people overlook when chasing wealth. Your income is rarely greater than your personal development. It's not about luck, connections, or timing alone. The truth is simple yet profound. To earn more, you must first become more. Wealth follows value. The more value you create in the world, the more income naturally flows to you. I have seen this time and again throughout my life, both in my own journey and in the lives of people I have mentored. The rich don't simply chase money. They focus on expanding themselves, improving their skills, and solving bigger problems. When I was starting out, I wasn't wealthy. I had very little, but I understood early on that if I could increase my value, opportunities would naturally follow. I remember taking the time to learn skills that others didn't want to bother with, skills that allowed me to offer solutions no one else could. I committed to personal growth every day. I read books, attended seminars, and sought out mentors. Slowly but surely, I became someone who could solve more complex problems and contribute more meaningfully. And with that growth came opportunities, contracts, and income I had never imagined before. This is the principle I want you to understand. Your income is a reflection of the value you bring to the marketplace, not just the hours you work. The strategy is straightforward. Continually expand your value. Start by identifying skills that are in high demand and can significantly impact your career or business. For example, learning a high-income skill every 6 months is transformative. It could be communication, negotiation, sales, digital marketing, coding, leadership, or financial literacy. Each new skill increases your ability to contribute and solve problems, which in turn raises your earning potential. Skills are like tools in your financial toolbox. The more proficient and diverse they are, the more problems you can solve and the more value you can create. But creating value doesn't stop at learning skills, it requires applying them. Increasing your value at work or in business means actively looking for ways to solve bigger problems. It's not enough to meet expectations or perform duties routinely. Look for opportunities to streamline processes, innovate solutions, or enhance the experiences of clients or colleagues. By identifying gaps and offering solutions, you make yourself indispensable. When others see the results of your contribution, they reward it with more opportunities, promotions, contracts, and yes, income. I remember early in my career taking on tasks that were beyond my comfort zone. I invested extra time and effort to ensure outcomes were excellent, and people noticed. That effort paid off in ways I could not have predicted. Trust, reputation, and eventually financial reward followed naturally. A practical step that often separates the wealthy from the rest is tracking the value you create. Every week, make a list of accomplishments, improvements, and the solutions you've delivered. When you see tangible evidence of your growth, it reinforces your confidence and helps you plan your next steps for expansion. This habit also prevents stagnation, as it keeps you focused on increasing your contribution rather than settling for mediocrity. Wealth comes from compounding value, just as money compounds with interest. When you consistently expand what you can offer, income naturally multiplies. Remember, income is the effect, value is the cause. Focus on personal development, acquire high-value skills, and apply them to solve meaningful problems. The more you give, the more the world compensates you. Commit to this process daily. Measure your growth and watch how opportunities and income expand alongside your value. Wealth is never accidental. It is earned through deliberate self-improvement and consistent contribution. Let's take a moment to consider something that too many people overlook when chasing success. Your habits predict your future. It sounds almost too simple, but it's true. The formula for success is not complicated. It's a matter of a few simple disciplines practiced consistently every day. Your habits, small, repeated actions determine where your life and finances are headed long before you even realize it. I have seen this principle unfold countless times in my own life and in the lives of those I have worked with. People often focus on big breakthroughs or dramatic opportunities, thinking that's what will change their lives. But the truth is, your daily habits quietly shape your destiny. If your habits are weak, inconsistent, or misaligned with your goals, wealth and success will always remain just out of reach.